Hello, fellow citizens of the digital agora. Uncle Diogenes here once again for an original digital campfire piece. Thank you for stopping by and listening. From 71 to Undone, the American Extinction burst. A digital campfire piece by me. Sourcing note for the record. Every factual claim below is drawn from across the spectrum. The Pentagon's own statements, PBS, Newsweek, the Christian Science Monitor, Fox News, CBS, NPR, the Supreme Court's published opinion, and people quoted speaking for themselves. Where I interpret, I'll say so out loud. That's the whole game. Let me start with a confession, because I think you've earned one. I still believe in this thing. The Republic. Not the team, not the brand, not the red hat or the blue lawn sign. The actual machine. The one with the gears that grind against each other on purpose. I believe it in a way you believe in an old cast iron pan that's outlived 3 generations. Scarred, heavy, a little ugly, and still the best thing in the kitchen. So when I tell you, I think we're living through something dangerous, I'm not telling you that as someone who wants to watch it burn. I'm telling you as someone who'd run back into the building. I want to talk to you tonight about a 55-year arc. It starts with a memo almost nobody your ages has ever heard of, written in 1971. And it runs right up to a Supreme Court decision handed down this very week. And I want to give you a phrase to carry, because once you have it, you can't unsee it. The phrase is extinction burst. What an extinction burst is. Here's the science, plain. If you've ever had a dog, and if you've followed me at all, you know I have a very opinionated one. You know this without knowing the name for it. You train a behavior with a reward. Press the lever, get the treat. Then one day you stop giving the treat. What does the animal do? It doesn't quit immediately. It presses the lever harder, faster, more desperately than it ever did when the thing was actually working. That spike, that frantic, redoubled effort right before the behavior dies, that's the extinction burst. Here's the trap, and I need you to hold on to it for the whole rest of this, because it's the part that keeps me honest. From the inside, a dying burst and a winning surge look identical. The lever slamming is the same motion, whether the treat is gone forever or just running late. You only know which one it was afterwards. So when I use that phrase tonight, I'm not promising you a death. I'm naming a signature, a pattern of behavior. And then I'm going to be honest with you about what we can and can't conclude from it. 1971, the memo. Let's go back to the start of the arc. August 23rd, 1971. A corporate lawyer named Lewis Powell, weeks away from being put on the Supreme Court, writes a confidential memo to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He titles it Attack on American Free Enterprise System. This is public. The full text lives in the Paul Archive at Washington and Lee's Law School. Paul's argument was simple. American business is under attack from campuses, from the press, from consumer advocates like Ralph Nader, and business needs to stop being passive. It needs to organize, fund think tanks, place scholars, shape the courts, take back the institutions. And it worked. This isn't conspiracy. It's measured fact. In 1971, 175 companies had registered lobbyists in Washington. Just 11 years later, 2,500. The memo helped midwife the modern infrastructure of organized money in politics. The sourcing here runs from the conservative side, which celebrates it, to the progressive side, which laments it. They agree completely on what happened. They just feel differently about it. Now, here's where I have to correct a tempting story, including one I told myself. The Powell memo was not a religious project. It wasn't culture war. Powell was a country club moderate. His memo was about capital, regulation, taxes, markets, cold and secular. Culture war engine, the religious nationalist engine, that got bolted on later. Through the late 70s, the 80s, a marriage of convenience. Money wing and the pew or church wing. Two very different congregations who didn't share a creed, but shared a list of enemies. Business got its deregulation and its judges. The religious right got its culture wardens. The glue was never shared belief. The glue was mutual benefit. I want you to sit with that, because it's the hinge of everything. The coalition that has run one half of American politics for 50 years was always an alloy of two metals that don't naturally bond. And alloys under enough heat and stress, they can separate. The metastasis. Somewhere along that arc, something curdles. I'm a constitutional guy, old school. And I want to tell you what the word Republican, small r, used to mean before it became a jersey. It meant you believed in structure over strongmen. It meant you accepted that James Madison built friction into the system on purpose. Three branches grinding against each other so that no single will could move too fast. It meant that when you lost fairly inside the rules, you accepted the loss, because the same rules that beat you today protect you tomorrow. That's not weakness. That's the entire deal. That's the cast iron pan. A real conservative, a real Republican, has a loyalty to the process surviving its own bad days. You don't get to love the system only when it hands you what you want. And what I've watched in my lifetime is that principle get hollowed out and replaced with something else. Outcome worship. The situation is legitimate when it gives me the treat, and illegitimate the moment it doesn't. That's not conservatism in any tradition I recognize. That's just appetite wearing conservatives' coat. Which brings me to this week. The court that held. This week, the Supreme Court ruled on birthright citizenship. Trump v. Barbara. And I want you to walk through it carefully, because the spin will be loud and the truth is quieter. The court upheld birthright citizenship 6-3. It struck down the executive order trying to end it. The Chief Justice wrote that citizenship is the right to have rights. That's from the published opinion. You can read it yourself at supremecourt.gov. Now sit with the irony, because it's enormous. This is a conservative-dominated court. 3 of its 9 justices were appointed by the very president who brought this case. This was the friendliest possible courtroom for that argument, and it still lost. With 2 of those 3 appointed justices crossing over. When you lose 6-3 on your home field with your own recruits on the bench, reading the Constitution the way scholars across the spectrum predicted they would, the honest response is the argument lost. The loss is the verdict on the argument. So watch what happens next instead. Watch the reflex. The response from the loudest corners wasn't, "We made our case and the court disagreed." It was a question of the court itself. And here's the tell I can't stop looking at. To attack this court, the movement has to attack the legitimacy of its own single greatest achievement. The conservative judiciary, it spent 50 years building. You cannot simultaneously say, this court is our crowning victory, and this court is corrupt, without the whole thing eating its own tail. That contradiction, that's the lever being slammed. One honest note, because I promised. Not every response was institution blaming. Plenty of folks said we lost, so now we go to Congress and try to legislate. That is the correct constitutional response to losing a constitutional argument. Even if you hate the goal, the question worth watching over the next months is which response wins. The legislative crowd or the court is illegitimate crowd. One of those is republicanism. The other is not. The quiet part said out loud. Here's where it stops being abstract. In November, a prominent political strategist told a room of conservatives, and I'm quoting him as reported across multiple outlets, that if we lose the midterms and we lose 2028, some in this room are going to prison, myself included. End quote. And then his prescription, take it to the maximum. Quote, seize the institutions, end quote. Because his words, quote, you're never going to have another shot, end quote. Then just days ago, the Speaker of the House told a conference, if we lose the midterms, the other side will turn every committee of Congress into an investigative body. They'll go after the president's family, the cabinets, the donors, and half of you in this room will be targeted, end quote. Then this line, quote, I run the protection program. I'll take care of you, end quote. That's on video. It is covered everywhere from MSNBC to the Kenyan and British press to conservative outlets. The quote is not in dispute. I need you to hear what's underneath those 2 statements, because it's the same thing in both. A normal party, going into a normal election, says, if we lose, our agenda stalls. That's the stake. Policy. These statements name a different stake entirely. Not our agenda stalls, but we get exposed. Prison, targeting, of a protection program. A phrase you usually hear in mob movies, not from the third in line to the presidency. Now, discipline time, because this is exactly where a dishonest version of this piece would overreach. Those quotes prove fear. They do not, by themselves, prove guilt. There are two readings. One, they're afraid because they know what they did. Two, they're afraid because they expect the other side to weaponize investigation regardless of guilt. Which, to be fair, both parties have been guilty of that. I can't read their hearts, and I won't pretend to. But here's what I can say, and it doesn't require mind reading. Both of these men responded to the fear of losing, not with, let's govern better and earn it, but with, let's make losing survivable or impossible. Seize the institutions. Run the protection program. That's not the language of a movement confident in its mandate. Coalition sure of itself does not talk like this. That asymmetry, that's the burst. The last guardrail, and now the part that should make all of us, every flag, every faith, every party, go quiet. The American military is built by design to stand outside of politics. Officers swear an oath not to a man, not to a party, but to the Constitution. That apolitical military is not a tradition. It's a load-bearing wall. Over this administration, the Secretary of Defense, or War, has fired or sidelined nearly 36 generals and admirals, and blocked the promotion of around 40 colonels, whatever, you know what I mean, and Navy captains already selected for flag rank, described in reporting as unprecedented in our history. These numbers come from across outlets, PBS, Newsweek, the Christian Science Monitor, and the Pentagon does not dispute the departures. It defends them. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the chiefs of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, gone. Just in recent weeks, General Chris Donahue, the man who was the last American soldier to walk out of Kabul, then commanded all NATO forces, land forces in Europe, retired early, 6th Army, 3 or 4 star to leave early under this Pentagon. And one detail I can't shake, the Army Chief of Staff who got pushed out, General Randy George. When the Senate confirmed him in 2023, the vote was 96 to 1. This is not a radical. That is not a woke general. That is a consensus professional that almost the entire Senate agreed on. Removed anyway. CBS reported this confirmation vote. It's a matter of the record. Now the defenders have a real point, and I'm going to give it to them at full strength, because that's the deal I made with you. Generals serve at the pleasure of the president. Civilian control of the military itself is a democratic principle. A defense secretary firing generals is not by itself a coup. That's true. I won't pretend otherwise. So the danger isn't the power. It's the standard. When officers are removed with no stated cause, when a consensus 96-1 Senate confirmed general is gone and nobody will say why, when the secretary stands in front of a room and General says, and I am quoting, "If the words I'm speaking today are making your heart sink, then you should do the honorable thing and resign," end quote. The message down the chain isn't to be excellent. It's to be loyal. A Trump-era Army official, not a parson, a man who served in the first Trump administration, put the fear plainly on PBS. Officers now wonder if the administration will, quote, go back and look at something they said or did when they were much lower rank years ago, end quote. A 3-star told him, relief without cause, quote, only leads to speculation about the secretary's motives and undermines trust within the officer corps, end quote. And here's the piece that should land for everyone who loves the founding documents. They're in the 250th year of this country. Go read the Declaration of Independence. Actually, read it. Among the grievances against King George, the colonists wrote that he had, quote, has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power, end quote. They listed the politicization of the military as a reason to found a nation. In the anniversary year of that document, we were watching the inverse pressure applied, and it deserves to be named in exactly those terms. Quiet honesty flag once again. 2 senior retirements in the same window. General Frenton at Special Operations. General Bussier in the Air Force may have had nothing to do with any of this. I'm not going to sweep every retirement into one story. Counting carefully is the only thing that makes the careful count mean anything. The voice that won't ring the bell. I don't want to leave you in the dark, so let me hand you a different kind of voice. Admiral William McRaven, retired, 4-star, the man who oversaw the raid that got bin Laden. A lot of you know him from one viral speech. Make your bed. University of Texas, 2014. And in that speech, there's a line about SEAL training, about the bell. In training, when you want to quit, you ring a bell, and it's over. His charges to those graduates was simple. Don't ring the bell. Don't quit. McRaven has spent years warning that the threat he sees is not from without. It's from within. But here's why I save him for the end. In his most recent work, in this 250th year, he's not a man of despair. He keeps calling this country the Great Experiment. And he keeps saying the same thing. We're not done yet. This is a man who sees the danger more clearly than any of us and refuses to ring the bell. Thread pulled tight. So let me pull all of it into one strand. The communist labeling of every opponent, the treating of elections, not as referendums, but as firewalls against accountability, the removal of professionals whose whole sworn duty is to give advice that doesn't bend to one man. These aren't 3 stories. They're one move seen from 3 angles. Relabel the enemy, survive the loss, remove the people who say no. Is it an extinction burst? The thing dying, slamming the lever on its way out? Or is it a phase transition? The thing mutating into something harder and succeeding? Told you at the top I'd stay honest. So here's the honest answer. I do not know. Neither does anyone selling you certainty. Remember 1971, the people who wrote that memo felt like they were losing. Their burst of mobilization didn't signal their death. It kicked off 40 years of dominance, desperation, and ascendancy. Look, identical from the front. But here's the thing they had that we have too. Choice. The lift. I'm going to close where I started. By the fire. With the pan. I still believe in republicanism. The small R kind. The boring, friction-filled, blues with grace, structure over strong mankind. I believe it precisely because it's messy and slow. It refuses to give any one person what they want quickly. Their refusal is not a bug. In a season like this one, their refusal is the whole point. Here's what I want you, Gen Z, millennials, anybody under this tent listening, to take it from a guy talking into a camera with a corgi at my feet. The Republic is not a building somebody else maintains. It's not an heirloom in a glass case. It's that cast iron pot. It only stays seasoned if it gets used. It rusts in a drawer. It survives by being picked up every single day by ordinary people who decided it was worth the wait. The midterms are not a season finale. The court holding this week was not luck. It was people doing their jobs inside a structure built to make them. Every guardrail that held because a human being chose duty over the easier thing. You're not too late, and you are not too small. That is the oldest lie power tells the young, that it is already decided. Sit down. It is not decided. The experiment is still running. We are not done yet. So don't ring the bell. Faith, family, forward, always. The great modern American Diogenes the dog thanks you if you made it this far. Like, share, and subscribe if you're interested in more unfiltered classical republicanism. Not this, whatever. Diogenes out.